Do, 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 do. Da 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 da. I don't have that much to talk about, but that's fine. I do love to talk about things. Where over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Do 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 do. Me where troubles melt like lemon drops high above the chimney tops. That's where you find me, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly. Do 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 do. There's a world that I dreamed of once in a lullaby. Alright, what's up everybody? My name is Terminus, and today we are reacting to Frieren episode 15. We're already past the halfway point. Who knew, right? What did we do last time? Let's just go right in. What did we do last time? We had a very interesting episode because it was mainly focused on relationships and romance especially, but also just how to communicate with one another, right? We did have that little lesson here, and just what people sharing feelings and trying to interact with one another, and caring about one another, or being careful around another because they don't want to upset the other party or whatever. So there's a lot of interesting things going on here. The first thing I wanted to talk about is actually that apparently there has been a translational error in how what Himmel said to Frieren about why he actually wanted to buy her a gift, which obviously it was more or less a reason that was put at the forefront but wasn't the main reason. But I'm sure Himmel wanted to buy her a gift either way. But there's a very interesting translation error. Apparently it wasn't following the defeating the Demon King, but rather just following a certain side quest. So I'm very curious about why that was translated the way it was. But we also had very interesting discussions in the comments about Frieren's awareness in general, right? We did talk about how aware is Frieren actually of what's happening, what she's doing. Now, obviously, one thing we can determine is from her gaze, from the way she reacts and the way she chooses it. She just liked the design of the ring, I guess, and she was like, well, I would have been more happy with something from a magic shop, which makes sense, right? Not only because she does like magic a lot and has that hobby of hers, but also because that is a special connection she does have to Himmel as well, with the magic and learning the magic and him being really impressed and liking that. But yeah, how aware was she? Well, she wasn't aware of the meaning of the accessory for sure. We do see that in the scene, at least the way it's displayed, it's certainly that way. But we don't know in how far what Frieren was saying to Fern about, well, I didn't know, was actually completely true. Because as we see in this scene, wait, give me a second, I'm gonna go forward again. Her reaction is very emotional to this. So we do definitely see something that not only surprises her, but that action has a special meaning for her, because the eyes are widened in shock, right? She's drawing in breath. There is a visceral emotional reaction to what's happening here, and she's definitely entranced by the situation. Now, obviously, it could be in part Himmel's natural charisma. You can put that off as that. I think it's debatable in what capacity she actually knew what this gesture meant, but it certainly is, in my opinion, very clear that it meant a lot to her emotionally, regardless of if she actually made the connection at that point in time. And I do believe that over the years she definitely learned what the gesture meant. So it's very interesting going forward, and the more gets revealed to us, right, in terms of their relationship, if there was a point in time where she was definitely aware of Himmel's intentions and his resolve behind it, and what her, or if she ever even got asked the question, more or less, right, and what her answer was and what her reasons actually are. Now, obviously, for Frieren, it's very hard to tell apart where does Frieren start, right? Where does Frieren, actual core Frieren, start? What are her actual reasons for doing the things she does? And what of that, when she's communicating with other people, is just her past taking over, right? Like the painful experiences she made before she met Flamme, and also the things she learned and adopted while being with Flamme, because for Flamme, deception was a strength, right? And revealing anything about yourself is a weakness. Now you might ask yourself, Terminus, what are you talking about? These are friends, right? Fern has been there for a long time. Frieren likes her a lot. 𝐸𝐷 has been there for some time. So why wouldn't she be open with, especially with Fern? And the reason can be, well, there can be a multitude of reasons, and it doesn't always make perfect sense, right? If we do have a pattern of behavior, even with our friends and family, we can kind of adopt that behavior, even though it might not be warranted or deserved in this case, right? We can keep that general emotional distance. But even if that's not the case, we do still have that aspect of, well, what is the main thing, the main problem that any enemy of Frieren, let's take demons or anybody else who is standing in her way, who wants to do her any harm, would identify as the core weakness of Frieren, the core thing to somehow get to Frieren, because Frieren herself is almost untouchable, right? I mean, obviously, if you don't know that, right, you go into the situation and you lose. But if you know that, or to some degree can sense that Frieren is just, you're not a match for her, then the first best thing you have to get to her is the people closest to her, right? And so the people getting in the crosshairs of anybody who wants her harm, or wants to disrupt her, or find a way to defeat her, is to get to Fern, to get to 𝐸𝐷, right? And that puts them in danger. So if we think this through, anything that Frieren reveals to these people is kind of endangering not only herself in terms of her being, well, corruptible and people being able to influence her and put pressure on her, but also the people close to her, right? So the closer she gets to them, the more they know about her, the more danger there is of it not only getting out, although I think she trusts Fern and 𝐸𝐷 enough for them to believe that they wouldn't ever say anything about that, right? That they wouldn't reveal any information about her without resistance, especially if somebody is there who wants to do them harm, but also it would endanger their physical health and their lives, right? So under that aspect, I think, and I don't think it's unreasonable for Frieren to think this way, especially with what we've seen with Flamme and how they how their philosophies kind of merged, and how she took over part of Flamme's philosophies, and with her past way before Flamme, with all the demon conflict and people of her race kind of more or less almost dying out, not entirely. Of course, we have med elves and we know they exist, but you know, it's a very interesting concept to really go deep into why Frieren doesn't divulge all the information she does divulge, but also going further than that, it's hard to distinctly break apart that reasoning, right? And the truth of Frieren's statements, or if Frieren's statements actually displayed the entire truth, because what we end up with is a strange mix of her being somewhat socially challenged, of course, in terms of at least her behavior and quote-unquote awkwardness, but also her having that strategy of not revealing too much about yourself, and that is a mental pattern that has established itself for hundreds of years. So it would make sense that at least going by, right, assuming that humans and elves, for example, have similar ancestral roots, that if an elf's brain works like a human's brain or similar to it, then at least we can say that not only the perception of time changes her perspective significantly. We see that people who have very short lifespans and very long lifespans, they have different philosophies, but also the fact that just the things she's experienced, right, and the strategies she adopted. If you've adopted strategies like this for hundreds of years, assuming a human would live that long, right, then obviously it's hard to revert those things, even if you're engaging with people that you're very familiar with, that you trust. So yeah, but I think it makes for great discussions, right? We have those fundamental discussions about it. Is Frieren neurodivergent, right? Would she count as neurodivergent if she was a human? But also, does it actually even apply or matter because she is a different species? So are there fundamental brain differences here? I mean, the only statement we got in that regard was Frieren saying, yeah, we don't have that many romantic feelings and reproductive instincts. That doesn't necessarily have to be true, and it can also be, in my opinion, just Frieren's opinion, because she's met a couple of elves, but at least after Flam took her in, she only met a couple of elves for hundreds of years. So we don't know how long the history is of Frieren with her elven village and the way she grew up. We don't know that, right? And even then, maybe she only experienced one village or one general community of multiple villages and never really went beyond that and found out that maybe her species is more varied and more unique in every corner of the world than she actually thought, right? So there's a lot of variation here, but also very, very cool grounds for discussion, right? For just throwing back thoughts and interpretations and opening our minds to conceptually new things that we might not see if we just watch the thing on our own and make our own judgments and not talk about it with other people. But yeah, another thing that happened last episode was Fern being very being very upset about people forgetting about her birthday, which I get it. Okay, it's an important memory for her with Stark, but as I said last time, Stark isn't too used to the idea, and it's not like he forgot, right? He actually thought of it, but their relation is a little bit shaky because both Fern and Stark haven't grown up with peers. And if you know anything about psychology, especially developmental psychology, you do know that yes, your parents and your teachers and your mentors, they influence you a lot growing up, right? Your behavior, the way you act, the things you like, and whatever. But equally so, at least starting at a certain age, equally so your peers are gonna influence you big time, right? People your age define oftentimes what you like, what you think about certain things, right? How you perceive them. And the more you grow up, the more this importance of the role of the peers is gonna increase, while the importance of the parents and the authority figures is kind of decreasing. Not that it wouldn't be important still at that point, but a lot of the learning and the observation and taking over behaviors and whatnot and social norms is happening very early in life, right? With the parents and the authority figures and whatnot. And starting at a certain age, like elementary school and further than that, the more you go into phases where your parents are away working, your teachers are only there for certain subjects, but your peers are gonna be there all the time, right? Your clique, your crews, your friends, your associates, and they will influence more and more how you behave and what you do. But both Fern and Stark didn't grow up traditionally with like parents and whatnot. If I remember correctly, Stark actually ran away from his village when he was rather young. And he wasn't very well liked in the village, aside from his brother who took good care of him. But he does have a lot of survivor's guilt there, and and blames himself on a lot of things. But he grew up with 𝐈𝐦𝐩, more or less, and 𝐈𝐦𝐩 was at this point already pretty old, and a different species altogether, right? A grown-up. 𝐈𝐦𝐩 seems to me also like he is not very immature. I could be wrong, of course. We didn't see that much about him, but from what we've seen about him, he seemed rather mature, rather grown up, rather, right? Although there's something to say about this, right? With pretending to be children, what 𝐏𝐢𝐏𝐏 said. But 𝐏𝐏𝐢𝐏, it applies more to 𝐏𝐏𝐏, I guess. And it applies a little bit to Frieren as well, in my opinion, and even to 𝐏𝐤𝐏. But yeah, and Fern, the same thing with Fern. Fern lost her parents very early, right? She had definitely childhood trauma, and then 𝐏𝐼𝐿 took care of her, who at that point in time was already pretty old. So both of them don't know how to interact with peers their age. They have a very hard time, especially since people our age we treat people our age always a little bit differently, especially when we're young. We have more of a closer innate connection to them immediately because of all the similarities and the similar phases of life you're going through at the moment. And then there's the point of feelings as well, right? That gets added as additional complexity. We do see that all or most of our characters are very complex in this show, and I think it's one of the reasons why Frieren is actually such a popular show. Not only does it have a lot of likable characters and a lot of characters who have fun sides, but also serious sides. We do have a lot of backstories, we do have a lot of complex character motivations, and we have a lot of interesting character relations. But not only that, it's not like the show started with that and built it up from okay, this is the characters, bam, go. But we constantly introduce new elements to the characters. We introduce a character, we tell a little bit something like the bare necessity of their backstory. We show what is happening in their lives right now and what's keeping them up at night, right? And then we move on, but we already sow the seeds for some other things to come up later on, right? And with each episode, we concentrate on another character, which is really cool because we leave the people the time to actually process what was happening with the other character, right? We start with character A, and then the next 2 episodes is going to focus on other characters, right? But maybe there's a little sprinkle of character A here and there and here and there, and we see what could come up. And then a couple of episodes later, we focus on the other character again, like on character A again. And character A gets even more characterization, he gets even more setup and backstory and whatnot, right? Or new elements are coming in that challenge their perceptions or their relations and whatnot, and they have to deal with that. They have to find their resolve, their courage. They have to find their right. They have to learn lessons or jump over their own shadow or deal with something that happened in the past, and it leaves the audience the time to actually, while focusing mainly on character B or C, to ruminate on that element of character A that's in the back of your mind that happened a couple of episodes ago, and just process it for longer until at that point, right, a couple episodes later, character A comes up again, and then you had the time to actually get yourself an opinion about it, which is really cool. And does this, I said it before, it does these transitions seamlessly, right? In many episodes you have multiple themes and they merge together in a very coherent image, even if the episode themselves are separated into, right, to like 10 to 14 minute chunks. It feels natural, it feels organic, and I think that is one reason why Frieren is so good. And also the fact that we, like I said, have such diverse and complex characters that people can really very well project themselves into it and identify with them. So great job doing that so far. But yeah, I did also like, we spoke about characters and getting more complexity. I do really like that Sign has a lot of different elements that Frieren and the rest of the party lack, that so far haven't been part of the dynamic. So he's integrating very well into this party, and this episode does a very good job of doing that, of establishing his role as somewhat of, I wouldn't say the party father, but more the party uncle, right? The person who is like a little bit older, maybe the brother of the father, and in a traditional family setting, and they're far enough removed for it to not be too emotionally compromising when it comes to certain topics, but at the same time they're experienced enough and also close enough on an emotional level. Sign is pretty new to the party at this point, right? He's not that close, but he likes all of them, so that's already a helper, and he seems like somewhat of a dependable guy, right? And he does have experience in different fields that Frieren and the rest of the crew don't have, which makes him a very good fit in not only having his own struggles and the party helping him deal with them, which is probably going to come up later, but also helping the party to actually deal with their own struggles, and providing a unique perspective on that. We do have a big part of this episode is communication, right? What is said in a talk, how should you approach a person with your concerns, right? At the same time, trying to keep track of not hurting them, right? Not upsetting them, like stark fears here, but at the same time also being honest, right? Trying to be upfront, because otherwise sometimes you're just gonna make it worse. I think what we can look at for that is the general, like in linguistics, there's actually a rule for communication. And there's a lot of rules to communication in general, right? We do have Paul Grice's rules, which are maxims of successful communication, where there's a couple of principles with being cooperative, right? Establishing a rapport, but also kind of looking at the quality and the quantity of your communications, right? Don't say more than needs to be said, but also don't say less than you need to say, because otherwise you're going to cause misunderstandings. Also quality, of course, right? Is what I'm saying actually relevant to our current conversation? And I think there's an interesting thing about breaking some of these rules in the sense of courtesy and mannerisms as well, right? Trying to adhere to general social norms, not being too vague in your expressions. I think Frieren actually sometimes hurts those rules, right? She's sometimes saying things that we, the audience, or characters in the show, misinterpret because she's not communicating enough from her. She's not telling people exactly what her knowledge base is, right? Not sharing her knowledge base in the sense that every person, every individual has a different understanding of the world and a different core knowledge that we go into a conversation with. And a very important thing, I think, is just to try and consider and keep in mind if the person sitting opposite of you, right, you're having the conversation with, if they share the knowledge that you have, right? If they have enough of a common knowledge base with you to really understand what you're putting down and to really get what you're saying. Otherwise, you need to elaborate more, right? And in the sense of urgency, obviously in urgent conversations, it's often that you can say less, especially in cases where people have a very common worldview or a common knowledge base or know you very well. Then you can actually say less and still get the message across. It's a tightrope, right? It's a balancing act, and it's always something to kind of consider. And beyond that, there's also non-verbal cues and verbal cues, right? Like verbally, what we're saying doesn't necessarily have to be the thing we're meaning, or maybe sometimes our mimics and gestures and, right, our memes and the way we move our hands, the tone in which we say something, it changes the way people perceive it. And that's also very, very subjective, right, based on the experiences of those people. But also sometimes people sound very sarcastic in general, and if you don't know that person well and you're communicating with them and they tell you something that they mean the way they say it, right, and right, they want to communicate that at face value, but they have a very sarcastic tone, maybe we completely misinterpret that and we're going to end up being mad at them, right? And the same here, right? This is behavior, right? Behavioral theory. Stark here has a certain assumption about Fern, which is that she's very upset about certain things that he's doing, that when he's being a doofus, or if he's right, if he's a silly baka, if he messes up, or if he's lazy, right? And Fern looks down upon that, and Stark himself considers this, just wanted to pick something with you because I don't know what you like. he considers that might hurt her feelings and that she might be upset about it, and he does want to avoid that. And by trying to avoid that, he actually makes it worse because it feels like he doesn't care at all. So, but I do wonder how it would have played out if he said that to her. I mean, there's a big possibility that she would have been upset anyway, because we didn't have that entire spiel before where she was let down completely, and then she was like, oh no, he was just being a little bit weird, right? And then she had her conversation with Psych, and she was like, okay, you know what, I'm gonna make up with him. But if she hadn't put that into thought, right, if she hadn't decided to make up with him beforehand, and we would have had the situation where 𝐸𝐷 was just gonna come up to Frieren and said, well, I know it's your birthday today, but you know, I wanted to pick something with you. Maybe she would have been like, you're kind of lazy, aren't you? You could have picked something yourself, right? And she wouldn't have even meant it in a mean way, but she's like that sometimes, right? Judgmental and kind of uppity, kind of right? Passive aggressive. Yeah, I mean, I guess both of them just have to learn to communicate with each other better, and it's gonna get better and better as time goes on. And we do see that already with the smile on her face when they actually make up. We do see that. So I'm very glad we had that moment, because it establishes more of their relationship, right? Relationships is not all hunky-dory smiles and butterflies and rainbows and whatnot. It's a lot just also misunderstandings and communicating after that and making up and working things out and just defining clearly who you are and who you want to be. And sometimes you don't know that yourself, so sometimes it's very hard, right, to express to other people what's going through your head if you yourself don't even know it. Sometimes you're upset despite maybe afterwards saying, well, I don't know why I was this upset, I shouldn't have been, because right, it doesn't make sense. But emotions are hard. Emotions are hard. Yeah. We had that little comment about picking presents actually being very important to Frieren. That's why I think I misunderstood that in the beginning. I thought like I didn't quite understand what Psych meant, but now I understand that what Psych meant was actually you wouldn't have rejected my offer, right? Psych's offer to choose anything you want and I'll buy it for you. If this like going together and picking it out together wouldn't be like an important experience in your recent history, and you don't want to necessarily do that for everyone that you know, but rather for people who are special. Which brings me to kind of Frieren's behavior. Frieren's behavior is very distant to everyone. She uses the Sama for everyone, for 𝐸𝐷, for Frieren, for Psych, as a means to kind of keep people at arm's length, right? But I think it's not working. We do see that, especially in this episode, her getting upset about people not buying presents for her, especially 𝐸𝐷. Her being kind of like pouty about that, or caring about things like that. It shows that she grows more and more attached to these people, no matter how she addresses them. So while this speech is certainly a nice little trick to, at the beginning, to keep people at arm's length and maybe cause reciprocating behavior that is more distant, that is less close, because people are like, okay, somebody calls me Sama, they don't disrespect me, right? They respect me, but they don't want to be too involved with me, too chummy with me, right? We have that situation earlier in an earlier episode where 𝐸𝐷's like, can't you call me without the without the affix, and Frieren is doing it one time and just just verbally abusing him in that sentence, and he's like, oh no, come on, I didn't want that, and then she's going back to Sama. So it's very interesting, but it isn't helping long term, because you get to know the person better and you grow attached, right? Especially if it's a person that you have a lot of like respect and warm feelings for, and that you like in terms of the personality. It's just happening. Yeah, another thing very interesting that I didn't pick up on last time, beyond the, well, we're not gonna go too much into the pretending to be a kid thing. That is real. Literal pretending to be an adult thing, that is real, literally. Like, I don't know, I just feel like no matter where I go in life, I'm never gonna feel like an adult. Like, it's very weird, and I think there's a real disconnect between how we perceive our parents and the people older than us in our family or in our inner circle, how we perceive them as adults when we are kids. But the older we grow, the more we realize they don't have it all figured out, right? They're just making it up as they go, just like we do right now. And it's a lot more difficult to keep all of these pieces in order and keep them from cracking and falling apart. And it's just the image to the outside that we project to, especially children, because children are vulnerable. They need guidance, they need praise, they need those steadfast people and figures in life that they can lean on. And in that regard, it's very important to keep up this image of at least having your shit together somewhat. But I can see how a lot of people, probably most people, are just pretending. Now there are people who are all from the beginning, but yeah, you know. Another thing I misunderstood was in the carriage when they talked about the levitating spell. Apparently it's, I mean, I was like, okay, this is cool and interesting that conceptually you have to understand it to actually do the spell. But interestingly enough, you can also just imitate the spell, according to Frieren, and kind of copy it, but not understand everything around the principles, just enough to kind of make the spell. And in those cases, it's very hard to modify it and change it in a way, like in this case, to actually carry the carriage, because all they did copy, all they did steal from the demons was the way to actually transport an individual, right? And that is an object that has an entirely different kind of mass and whatever. I also called Frieren reckless when she did all the thing with the shooting and then them crashing down. But what I didn't realize with the horse, it kind of looked weird to me. But what I realized now is that the horse is actually levitating. So she did the thing that they talked about in the carriage a couple of seconds or minutes earlier, where they were like, okay, can't you try to just break the fall by making us levitate right before we have the impact? And that's what she did. I mean, she didn't do it perfectly and she apologizes about it, but honestly, every one carriage would have been dead if she didn't do it. So, and yeah, then we have to talk about like buying gifts and whatnot. It's always difficult, right, to gauge other people's reactions and to try to just do right by them, and you do want to make them happy, but it's really hard to gauge what a person likes and how much they would like it. They would prefer something else. But yeah, it was kind of a bad move for Stark to be like, should I buy you a replacement? I mean, she was okay with it, so he should have just left it alone. Because in this, I mean, to be fair, he got a nice, cute reaction out of it, which was, I mean, the closest you can get to cute and vulnerable in Fern's case, although Fern's still putting up that front of the reprimanding parent figure, right? But she's like, yeah, well, you put a lot of thought into that, don't ever say that again. And that kind of makes you realize that she would be really hurt if he wouldn't consider that a good gift, or if he would end up feeling like he did a bad thing, because she actually liked it, she enjoyed it, and she definitely, I think she treasures that, even with the verbal abuse coming later with the cause Stark is an idiot. But that's kind of just her quips, and I think Stark just needs to read more into it, in the sense of understanding that she doesn't mean it like that. At the same time, it wouldn't make the situation as funny for us as the audience if he actually caught on to that completely, let me say it like that. Also, Frieren sleeping like halfway across the bed, it's just fucking hilarious. But yeah, we come back to Frieren and her lost ring, and Fern realizes how important it is to Frieren, even though Frieren just doesn't want to admit it. Right, Frieren is keeping herself very close to the chest. One thing that really makes me sad in this whole situation is her expression and the way she's the way she's expressing herself like this. I'm used to losing things. Look at that face. What does that say? Right, it's resignation, right? There's sadness in there. I mean, yes, she's a little bit smiling, but it's a weary smile, right? I'm used to losing things, and you can apply that to so many things, right? Used to losing people. Used to losing important keepsakes, right, over the years. Because circumstances just happens at some point if you live hundreds of years, and you can't take everything with you, right, on your travels. Otherwise, you're gonna go around with like a whole wagon load of stuff at the end. And something gets lost along the line. Just like in every story, a little part of it gets lost. And it's a very sad thing to see, right? If we're like being that resignating about it. But we prevail, we pull through, and we at least managed to preserve this moment for her. I mean the moment is preserved, but right, the keepsake for the moment. And I do really wonder how far this went in the end. We don't know, but we do certainly know that at this point Frieren appreciates it a lot. And I think even back then she partially got it and partially appreciated it. It's just in how far did she get it, and also what was her reasoning on her decision making going forward, right? Her inaction, or maybe even her action of denying it or rejecting it. There can be a lot of reasons that are not cruel, that are not heartless, that still suggest that she had a lot of feelings, but at the same time maybe she had other things that she was concerned about. For example, the difference in lifespan. Maybe she wasn't emotionally prepared to get herself into that situation, because shocker, if you live thousands of years, it's a very hard thought to completely give yourself over to feelings of love and closeness if you know the person is gonna die in, I don't know, 60, 70, 100 years. And then you're gonna be alone again, and there will be this gaping hole inside of you. Now, obviously, didn't work out, because no matter if you... I mean, maybe at least then you have fond memories, right? You can look back and be like, okay, I don't regret doing these things. I'm glad I did so. Maybe you even have children, right? And you can take care of them and pass on to them what a great person their father was, or their mother in other cases. And but in this case, right, you have all you're left is a lot of regrets in addition to those feelings of loss, because if she wanted it or not, it still hurt a lot. And maybe she kind of just pushed that to the side and ignored it, because she didn't want to confront the fact that either way she's going to be very hurt once he's gone. And I guess she made the wrong decision here. She was a coward in that sense. I do wonder if she does have kind of like did have sympathy for Stark, because she kind of low-key related to him in that regard. She was like, okay, Stark has never confronted the monster, right? He thinks himself weak, and he thinks if he does it, he's gonna die, or he's gonna fail, and that will be a shame to his master, to the people who trusted him, to the people who looked up to him. And Frieren on a parallel note, she never been in a relationship, right, like this, at least not a romantic one, and she was just afraid of being hurt, being disappointing other people, right? The results that come from it, right? If I make this decision, if I get that resolve, am I gonna regret it later? And as we've talked about it before, the main thing you often regret is the decisions you didn't make. And yeah, that's where we end last episode. But enough talking, guys and girls. We're gonna make our way into episode 15. I'm very curious about what's to happen. We know from the preview that maybe 𝐸𝐲 is gonna show up, or maybe somebody who knew Stark and or his village. So maybe his father as well. That might be like a confrontation. I can't wait for Frieren to slap his father and be like, no, you're wrong. Stark is incredible. I don't know if she would do that. I don't think so, but you know, it would be cool. It would be really cool. Maybe Fern is gonna do it. Fern definitely could do it. I definitely see Fern doing it. So yeah, I'm really hyped about this. Also, episode 15, new intro or no? Could go either way. We're gonna see. Like it's gonna be interesting. Maybe we have an intro reaction coming soon. This time, by the way, if I do an OP, I'm actually gonna look at the full version, right? So I'm probably gonna wait until the full version releases, and if there's an actual full version that has Frieren visuals and not, right, music video visuals, because that's also a thing that sometimes happens, that there's a song that gets used for an OP or ED, and you obviously have the OP and ED and the visuals with that, but you also have the official release with the longer song, but the full-length song actually has normal music video visuals. In that case, I might look at the lyrics and that's it, right? But either way, right, it's gonna be very interesting. Guys, if you do like my content, if you do enjoy my reactions, please give me a like. Don't forget to subscribe. So I'm reacting to Frieren every week, at least for now, as long as I can. I don't know how it's going to be in February because there's exams coming up, but before and after that, most definitely, I want to keep this reaction stuff up for around at least a year and then decide how I'm going to proceed. So you gotta have your content coming at least for the coming year if I can manage it in any way. But yeah, please subscribe, ring the bell if you want to get notified whenever I release a new video. There's also the Patreon. I do have a Patreon. There's early access to Made in Abyss, 1 week early access, continuously on. Well, unless I think January we have 1 week where I set out because it's the transition between season 1 and season 2. I'm probably gonna react to the movie, and after the movie I'm gonna be gone for a week, and then maybe we do a discussion format where we kind of summarize season 1 and kind of just chill out and talk about it for an hour or two, and then we're going into season 2, which is gonna be really hype. And then soon, right, end of January, start of February, there's going to be the poll coming up, what's going to replace Made in Abyss. But yeah, Frieren is going to be early, probably by a couple of days. Generally, I'll say the edited reaction is going to be around 3 days early for people who subscribe to the Patreon Scholar tier, like the $3 tier, and but I'm gonna actually release the timer version of the Frieren reaction 1 or 2 days after the actual episode comes out, because timer is a little bit quicker to do, so I can put it out for everybody who's like on the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, who's like, oh, I'm really in the mood to watch a Frieren reaction, and I don't mind syncing it up or just going for the pip. In that case, cool, you can do that. It's on Patreon, and then the edited reaction is going to come Monday, Tuesday, and then it's going to be public Wednesday, Thursday, as we kind of established at this point. I'm sorry I'm talking that much, but I have a couple of infos going out. I'm also having on my YouTube community page, you can kind of suggest some movies that I could watch for the 100/ possibly, hopefully 200 subscriber special. I wanted to react to a movie. It can be any movie, but obviously I'm getting a lot of anime suggestions, and I do assume it's probably gonna end up being an anime. But yeah, suggest series for me. I'm gonna put them in a poll later, and people on Patreon can then vote on that, and then we're gonna bring those results, like the top contenders of those results, we're gonna bring them to YouTube and Discord, and let people decide what of those things we actually end up watching. Now, obviously, the top contenders will probably go on a list that I'm gonna make for when I have the next movie that I want to react to. It's gonna make it in the polls again, so don't worry about that. Yeah. Other than that, join the Discord. There's a couple of people on there now, not many, but a couple of people, and I would really love to welcome you. And like, Discord links kind of didn't work, I think. It linked to a private channel, but now I kind of fixed that. Discord is being an idiot sometimes. I kind of fixed that, so look in the description down below. There's a Discord link if you want to join us and just talk. You can also just lurk, right? It's not a lot going on, but if you don't want to just jump on and be like, oh, here I am, I'm gonna start talking a lot and discussing with people, you don't have to do that. You can just keep being passive and then say something if you have an interesting opinion piece and want to talk with people about it. There's a lot of forums about like my reaction series, but also non-reaction stuff that you guys can talk amongst yourselves. And yeah, there's announcement. I have my schedule that's semi-regularly being updated on Discord, so you can kind of keep your eye on if I'm changing something about when things are gonna get released and whatnot. But yeah, let's actually get into the reaction now. And we're gonna start this up in a 3, a 2, a 1. Oh, yeah, hit it. very sad, right? The tracks of your life being lost over time. Yes, these wonderful people in life. And we can just preserve a fraction of who they were once they're gone. People forget. And all that's left in the end, right, is the message. And that's the legacy. I just hope that what they taught us can be carried on. Alright. Smells like trouble. Alright. That doesn't sound like trouble though. Oh, Fern, what is going on? 4 years. At some time. You gotta get those perception checks in. Oh, yes, you greedy little goober. Alright, here it comes. Please sign. Control yourself. Alright, where's the Yone-san? Let's go. Okay. The entire village is passed out. Some kind of creature, maybe? Roll the credits. Of course he is. Curses. Oh, so we don't know anything about them. It's very interesting. It might be about, like, manipulating human brains, especially. Oh, okay. Alright, right, so there's a distinction. And that makes sense, right? Holy and unholy, right? Curse and blessing. Oh, so it's gatekeeping, kind of. Privilege. They might have a different source of power, right? We're like stuck. Alright, kill the origin. Oh no. He's the first to be affected. We lost our warrior. I assume the curse might grow stronger the closer they are to. Ah, poor Stark, you're being levitated again. And we might lose our second mage as well. So the question is, does it affect elves, and how does it affect elves? Interesting, the youngest members are affected first. The youngest members are affected first. Does it have something to do with physical age? Oh no, apparently not. 5 seconds is enough for her, I think. Sinus resistant, of course, sinus resistance as a member of the clergy and as a talented priest. That makes sense. A venomous plant, okay, interesting, right? I mean a monster, yes, but plant-like. Chaos flower, okay, so it's sapping away mana, okay. Obviously Frieren is a feast in that case. Oof. The plan said counterspell. Oh, I'm digging this OST. Holy shit. Put in the work, come on. Harder. Communication, that's what we talked about. Oh, okay. Damn. Fucking putting down Frieren. Was she the one to destroy him? Or was it him? I mean, they all were, but you know what I mean. Yeah, I mean, I guess you have to trust, right? And just wake her up. Holy shit. Rolled and smoked. Alright, neat. This is actually a cool way to get Frieren out of commission and make the stakes a little bit higher, right? Create the tension. Very nice. Oh, is that an One-san? Don't fall in offside, please. I mean, of course, right? The experience. I love how she's getting more open with communication and praise and all of that. Look. Stark, don't look down on him, okay? Oh, is that 𝐸𝐬𝐪? No. That they would have reacted differently. Stark, hello? They're probably recruiting for like military shit. I don't think Stark's gonna react to that. Yeah. No. Look, Frieren, hear him out. If he's got a job and it's temporary. Right, that changed her mind quickly. Oh, common origins, okay. It's not gonna make Stark feel great, of course, because he knows the philosophy behind it. Oh, he looks really... He looks a lot like Stark. Maybe he needs a public appearance or something. Oh, he actually died. They need to pretend that he's alive longer than he was. Oh, 3 months. That's a long time, though. Alright, battle scar. Take one for the team, Stark. Oh, they don't ask him at all, though. I mean, he's gonna do it, I'm sure, but he just doesn't look too excited about it. Alright, we're learning dancing. You better show off these moves with Fern later. And they lavishly eat while he's being prepared here. Come on, Fen. Stark needs a pick-me-up. Oh. No. She likes you more if you're just a lovable Indian warrior. That's nice because she likes you for yourself. She was a little bit impressed though, I think. That's... stability of the region. Yes. A little bit of a heart-to-heart. Oh, Stark's gonna relate hard here. Alright, so he has some insight here, some empathy. But he appreciates the hard work. Alright. Okay. Different problems. Interesting. Different problems. Which, okay, it makes sense and it kind of helps Stark as well. Oh. Excuse me. You're just like, not my problem. You do it. It's interesting that despite Fen actually being somewhat of a formal person, she isn't too used to the etiquette. Oh, look at that. He's right. His gaze is just on her, which is very interesting. I love it. You say that, but you know, a little bit of variation makes the spice, right? Again, right? The main view, that the eyes are going directly at her. I think dancing is really cool. You need mutual understanding, right? You need to be in rhythm with one another. And they're both having fun. Oh, Frieren is here as well. Alright. Wonder if Frieren and Himmel ever danced. Ah, then he blames himself. That is hard. I mean, but how can you not, right? So what does Stark have to say? What's going through his head? There's something on his mind. Yeah, I mean, true. But he knew that. Even if he might have been the better father. Oh, that's even worse, right? The thoughtless words we say when we're arguing. Again, we relate to one another. I have a mission, I have something to fulfill, a duty. And he understands that, right? He understands that more than maybe other people do. Come on, Frieren, pick one. Frieren be like, oh, he's gonna be dead anyway. Let him just... Oh, I saw that, Stark. I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. And Frieren did too. Alright. A forgotten hero. Alright. Long-lived friends. And I'm already getting somewhat of an idea what this could be, right? Because think about it, right? Sign and his buddy. I mean, it doesn't need to be, right? Long-lived can mean other things, right? But we'll see how it works out. And yeah, that's Frieren episode 15. Actually, a very, very nice episode. It's a lot of heartwarming moments, a lot of moments of relatability, and I think Frieren in general is just so amazing when it comes to trying to figure everything out. It's I wonder why there's no ED here. Maybe it's the file I do have, and that's why there's no ED. Or maybe they're about to switch stuff around and just had a longer episode in this case and just cut the ED because of that. But yeah, really cool. I'm looking forward to episode 16 and the discussion of 15, right? But I actually do have something to do right now. I'm gonna have to go to a party, birthday party, and so I'm gonna interrupt this here, the recording, and we're gonna talk about the episodes afterwards. It's gonna give me a little bit of time also to ruminate on all the themes and the stuff going on inside of it. Maybe it's gonna be a better discussion for it, a more structured one. We'll see. But yeah, I hope you go back to YouTube, and I'll see you in the discussion. Right, let's talk about it, right? Where do we start? Let's start at the beginning, right? Easiest way to start. No new intro. A little bit of a shame, but at least we can enjoy 𝐲𝐻𝐻𝐸𝐻 song again, which I always love listening to it in the beginning of an episode. So we start out this episode with a little bit of a callback, I would almost say, because first of all, we see the Laub Hills. Not much to talk about in terms of like the name. Laub means holy shit. Laub are dead leaves, right, falling on the ground. I don't know if there's another word for it in English. Yeah, we do have a little bit of kind of a parallel callback to episode 1, right? We do have 4 people being in a cart driving to a destination, right? It's back in the day, it was the heroes party with Himmel, Frieren, 𝐸𝐬𝐻 and 𝐈𝐦𝐩, and now we do have Frieren, Fern, Cyan and Stark. And they're kind of traveling in a similar way here, so really nice visual parallel and callback to that. I do really like that. And we do have a little bit of a recap as well in terms of like just talking about, hey, by the way, how long have you been traveling together? And that, in my opinion, it's good because it contextualizes a little bit for the audience where we are in the story and how far we've come, right? Fern has been traveling with Frieren for 4 years, Stark has been part of the crew for 1 year, and now we have the newest member, Cyan, who's only been there for a couple of months. Maybe even 1 month or something along those lines. I mean, they've been traveling a bit, right? And we do have that joke with the mimics again, but what I find really amazing is the way they animate that. I like the little exclamation mark over her head, and then we have the cut to the mimic eating Frieren, and she's like, treasure chests contain unlimited potential. Right? I don't know why, but it's just like that kind of goobery behavior and kind of comical approach at situations like this that I really like, that break the tension a little bit and have you feel at least at this point, we feel a little bit familiar with the situations that are coming up here and there, which is really fun and nice, just to casually talk and joke about things like these. And Sign is getting withdrawal symptoms for older women. Don't worry, dude. You're gonna get your Renaissance at some point. Yeah, and we stumble upon a village that seems to have been afflicted with something, and we introduce a new concept, which is curses. Curses not being magic, but rather more the opposite of blessings. So we do find out that the clergy mainly deals with curses because they can identify them properly, while mages can maybe feel that they're being interfered with, that something is happening to them, but they can't identify what exactly it is. And it's always been privileged to the clergy, and we do see some kind of classism here, in the sense that this knowledge is being kept out of the hands of the public, of the general public, and even out of the hand of the mages in this regard. So we do have a strict separation between the church and the scientific community, which you could say, well, scientific, I say scientific, but it's the magical community, obviously, but they seem very science-oriented in the way they feel and the way they structure and organize themselves, academia. And you have that restriction to the conventional wisdom of a clergy. I do wonder if that is due to the fact that clergy and priest spells are based on a completely different logical structure and system than magic is, and that it has nothing to do with mana. We do see that a lot in RPGs, like in role-playing games and whatnot, that we have mages being mostly based on mana and magical power and whatever, and the clergy obviously is based on faith and the connection to the divine, which also you see that in D&D as well, in classical fantasy stories and whatnot. But yeah, we do see here that Sign is coming quite in handy. And we do already see the older Renaissance that probably Sign's gonna dream about a couple of times as we travel away from the village again. But yeah, we're identifying it, and Sign's like, well, I can't do much about it. I can only wake people up for 5 seconds at a time. The best thing to do is eliminate the root of the cause, right? To just go there and pluck it out. He can treat the symptoms, but it's not going to be very successful, and he can only do it with very low effectivity. So yeah, let's just do that. And Stark is a little bit scared again, which, I mean, it's his character trait. Like, he's getting anxious about that. I had the theory actually if younger people are affected more quickly, but I mean, that can still be the case, right? We have Stark, who is the youngest character, being affected first. Then we have Frieren, who is being affected second. And then we do see Frieren actually being affected. And the reason why Sign isn't affected first is that he's a member of the clergy and, as such, more resistant against curses. So it can still be somewhat of it could also be a magical capability thing, right? Because Stark has the least mana as far as we know, Frieren has the next one, and then Frieren has the most mana, which would be very interesting because apparently this monster feeds on the mana of its victims. But anyway, Frieren's gonna sleep, gonna take a little nap, it's gonna be fine, and she's like, you know what, you wake me up when you found it. I trust you, son, you do your thing. And Side's obviously being panicky a little bit. You're like, holy shit, she leaves me alone there. What the fuck am I supposed to do? I do like the thing about stepping on the branch. I thought he might trigger some mechanism or whatnot, but he actually immediately comes out. So it was more of an artistic choice, which is really, really neat, I think. And we do have this plant. He starts dodging it and attacking it, and realizes that the plant can actually reflect his spells, which is very problematic. We do also find out that they generally try to connect themselves with the local flora, apparently, which is really cool, because if you think about it, stuff like this exists in nature as well. If you look at a lot of the fungi that exist in the world, there's giant networks of fungus roots that are all connected with one another and connected to the nearby trees that exists within our ecosystems in real life as well. But Science kind of despairing. He's wondering what he can do. Obviously, he's the only one people can, or his party can rely on right now, and he's kind of going through it in his head what he's supposed to do. But the solution was pretty simple actually, and he actually calls back to what 𝐿𝐻𝐢𝐏 told him about their stories and whatnot, and he was like, well, you don't necessarily need mutual trust between adventurers. I don't think 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐢𝐏 is right here. I think it's still mutual trust, right? 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐢𝐏 just learned that you don't need to necessarily always have be able to reach it, to read each other's minds. If the person that you're coordinating or cooperating with is very knowledgeable and knows what to do very quickly in any given situation, and that is actually the case for Frieren, because she has a lot of experience fighting monsters in general and traveling the world and finding out about things. So the moment she saw the plan, she actually immediately identified that. And but 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐢𝐏's thing about I chose to believe in her gave him this little push to say, okay, you know what? I trust that she's experienced enough and she's good enough that she understands what I want. Now, obviously, he's still trying to relay that information, being like, come on, go for the core, but he doesn't even have to say it. She's already on it. And bam, we one-tap this creature, which, yeah, I mean, for Frieren, the problem was she was asleep. That was the problem for Frieren. I find it very cool that we find new ways and creative ways to make it so that the stakes and the tension is still high in the situation. Because in this case, right, what is going to take all of the tension and potential negative impact out of a situation? It's that Frieren is present, right? Because she has the solution to almost everything. And since she's a mage and is more affected by curses than a priest in this case, we do have somebody left awake who is not Frieren, which means Frieren has a problem. Yeah, she knows what to do and she could easily do it, but only if she is awake. And that kind of displays the immense value, not just of status effects in RPGs oftentimes, but also just in real life situations. There is situations in which we might have the capacity to think about solutions and actually come to a very good conclusion and overcome a situation, but there are also circumstances that might prevent us from doing it. When you think about a person who is very knowledgeable, who's very talented, and has learned a lot for the upcoming exam, but the moment the exam comes, their fear kicks in and they have this anxiety, and they will be a lot worse on the exam that they actually have the potential to be because of these things holding them back. Now, that's a very loose connection, I know, but you can't find it. I mean, if you find something that is more closely related to in reality, I welcome you to write it down in comments. That would be really cool. But that's the best thing I can think of when it comes to, yeah, I can technically overcome this challenge. I can do it, but parts about myself or parts about extraneous and external circumstances kind of prevent me from developing that full potential of being able to come to that conclusion, right? It's a lot of things, right? Stereotype, like self-activated stereotypes, time pressure, yeah, people or certain parts of the circumstances being in your way, basically, in preventing you from using your full capacity to actually overcome a situation. And that is a very cool way in this show to do that. I also really like the angles that we're using here, which like the very tilted angle in this case, showing the impact of the shot that was going up in the sky and then homing in the plant. Yeah, Stark and Fern slept through the whole thing, which fun. And Sign actually gets to brag a little bit in front of the older Oni-san here. And then he keeps dreaming about her for quite some time. Frieren, I really like how I said that in the episode, how she praises people. So we do have the fortress city of 𝐸𝐬𝐏, very close, or more than a halfway point to 𝐸𝐧𝐟𝐨, as they say. 𝐸𝐸𝐏 means prior, right? In front of something. Very funny. Again, very, very centric on our personal journey, these names. Which is obviously, in my opinion, just that the author being a little bit punny with his names. Just showing that it's... right, having a little bit creativity in there, while at the same time going back to his theme of German names. And we're finally more than the halfway point. We want to resupply here, and then we meet Lord Orden, which means as much as Lord Metal. Very funny. So we do have this immediate image of prestige and accomplishments and whatnot. And apparently he is from the same village as Stark originally, or at least his family came from that village. But Frieren is blocking him, trying to request Stark do something for him, because obviously Frieren doesn't want to. At least that's the primary reason she says so, that she doesn't want to lose her frontliner for the continued journey. But also I think Frieren is just being a little bit protective, and I do like that. She takes care of her kids, basically, in this regard, her adoptive kids, and she cares a lot for them and doesn't want them to be influenced negatively by people with power and authority. But we are very tight on cash. The adventurer's life is a poor man's life, it seems. So Frieren changes her tune pretty quickly after that. and we're going on this little quest. We are pretending to be the Lord's son, because the Lord's son died a year ago, or a couple of years ago, in a fight. And it is implied in the way we saw that kind of, that it was a fight against demons. I don't know where here, right? We do have those little black particles going up, so I do assume it probably been a fight against demons and not infighting between different countries, which is also a possibility, of course. And yeah, his death is still very much a secret, and only a few select people who wouldn't say so know. And the Lord actually has a good reason why he wants to keep up that charade, because he wants the people not to lose hope in a very critical time in which you need to rebuild and bolster your defenses. So he wants to keep up morale by pretending Stark is that person. And yeah, I mean, he also says that this is basically what his son would want. We do have that little heart-to-heart later on between Stark and Orden, who I think relates a lot to Stark, and Stark relates a lot to him because they grew up in similar circumstances with similar backgrounds. So Orden is like, well, yeah, it was generally, it would be what he wanted, that the people are in high spirits and do what's right for the people. And I do really believe him when he says that. So Stark takes one for the team, and Frieren and Fern feast. And he has to learn to, I guess, read and write, I think read or whatever, and it's just fucking killing him. And I can understand it, like, there's so much stuff that you partially sometimes have to do. And then we have that image. Right, immediately we mirror the image of the last episode, which is really cool. And we do have Stark being actually very serious looking at her. I think that's a Stark testing the waters, right? He feels some kind of way, maybe not strongly, but he has this inclination, and he's testing the waters, and that's pretty fucking brave of him. And also, yeah, it's just great that he does it. Fern is, it doesn't suit you, which I find very, very amusing, because she's always criticizing him being an idiot and being a doofus and just generally not being very eloquent. And at the same time, it's it's kind of the thing that she also likes about him, right? That's endearing to her at this point, and that she really, it feels weird when he behaves completely differently to who he normally is. And she looks at the hand, small little detail, but very important, because a scene like that does make an impression on you, especially if you're not used to it from the character. So you get certain thoughts, you're just thinking about it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the heart-to-heart, and then we have the son. And we have the immediate relatability, right? He's not as talented as his brother. But then comes the but. Because he is actually the father actually knows how to properly, or, well, not properly maybe, but he knows that his son is trying hard, and he knows that all that effort will not go to waste, and it will turn into something later down the line. He says himself, he will be a better warrior than me one day, which maybe he made experiences with his own father that was, well, they were from that village, so maybe his own father was strict as fuck and didn't like that, and he himself was maybe not the most talented person. Maybe he had brothers or other siblings or whatnot that were better than him, right? Much like Stark, and at some point, when he got his own sons, he was like, you know what? I can't treat them like this. He's very calm. He's very good in doing instructions. Be calm. You're not in your village, right? He can relate immediately. You see, he can relate. He doesn't need to say more than that. He doesn't have to tell his entire backstory. We can see that and hear that in how he expresses himself. And he relates, and he's like, relax, dude. You're gonna be fine. And we talk about it, and he's like, someday he will be a stronger knight than me. And we immediately... I love that Frieren does that. We immediately recontextualize the experience, the negative experiences that Stark made with his own family, with his own father, and put that into a different light, not for his father, but for this other person who is not his father. And this is when assimilation turns into accommodation, right? We go from, hey, there's this similarity, so both of them are the same, and we realize they're not the same. And then we realize the possibility that even if things seem to think alike, be alike oftentimes, even if there's similarities and parallels and whatnot, they don't need to necessarily be the same thing. And so Stark realizes that this Lord Orden, he's more like his brother than he is like his father. And I think that makes him very happy, and it makes him also connect to this person and want to help him just out of his own goodness of his heart. And we do know that Stark is good of heart. He likes to help people. We've seen that earlier in these episodes when Fern actually was looking for him, and she traveled around town and saw that on his own birthday he was doing so much good for other people, just casually. But yeah. Next scene. Fern and Frieren trying donuts, but Fern is supposed to learn etiquette too, because she's supposed to accompany Stark on the dance, which very nice way to continue the theme, right? First of all, last time it was just your own internal motivation, and now it's external forces that put you into a situation where you maybe get closer again. But yeah, look at her face. Holy shit, like, look at it. Wait a second. Here it comes. What the fuck? Now I have to do it too. And yeah, she's gonna feel it. She's gonna feel that the pressure, the stupidness, the stuck-upness, and these corsets that they had during that time. I can't have been really healthy or comfortable in any way. And 𝐸 is getting his Renaissance. He's like, oh, looks good. Very curious about that. Frieren gets to read. She's reading the grimoires. Of course she is, right? I mean, she's got nothing else to do. What else she's supposed to do? That's just what she would have done anyway in some cases that we had, where she wanted to stay in that one town for 6 months because she was like, there's some interesting magic shops there. And yeah, it's not easy learning to dance, learning all that shit. And I really like, I don't know why, but I really, really, really love this sequence. Let me just put it on normal speed for a second. And look at that, look at that. It's such an interesting, this is where it starts. That's what I'm talking about. She turns around and I don't know what it is. Is it the fluidity of the scene or the unique, like, Fern being actually flustered, which is also something we don't see often, but this is a really, really beautiful, nice animation sequence of her just making mistakes and falling. Really nice angle too. It's a really cool shot. And then we have that, right? Stark is still training, but we're supposed to assume they're training in parallel. And look where his eyes go. They're not getting away. They're not going away from Fern. His mind is on her. That's clear from what we see here. And then the ball comes, and we do our little thing here, mingling with the nobility. Fern's dress is beautiful, and Stark looks very, very presentable, very impressive with that uniform and all that. I mean, it's like pixely now when it's just VLC and whatnot. But yeah, we do have that, and he's like, we might as well dance. And very smooth, Stark, very smooth. And she's like, that really doesn't suit you, but that doesn't stop you from being like impressed a little bit, I think, and wooed. So they start dancing, and they have a really beautiful dancing sequence. I do think there's in a couple of look how she's looking away. First, she's nervous. Clearly, she's nervous. She has that little sweat on her cheek, and she's looking down always, right? Probably first she doesn't want to look him in the eye because she's a little bit afraid of that direct contact, because it's a very intimate thing, right? You're a couple of meters away from somebody. It's a very intimate thing, and also she's probably looking a little bit at her feet to make sure she's not doing anything wrong. But he's leading perfectly, and she's impressed, and that makes her look up, look at him, and he's being very courteous here because he's looking away. Actually, he's looking away to make it more comfortable for her, which I really like. This I mean, that's very Stark in my opinion. That's the good, right? That's the Chad version of Stark, because he can be very gallant and impressive if he wants to be, even though he's sometimes a real baka and being real, not really self-confident all that much, I feel, in many situations. But it's probably a lot of the situations where he's not familiar with. I mean, he's not familiar either, but he learned to dance properly, and he's getting more comfortable with Fern, which I really like. So now they make contact, right? Eye contact, and he's smiling, and she's starting to smile. And I need to roll that back because it looked ugly as fuck when I was stopping all the time. Let me see. All right, it's kind of looking a little. Oh yeah, now we got it. And she's starting to smile, and they're enjoying themselves, which I really, it warms my heart to see that. And the special dance moves, right? You know that, like the classical dance. You have to be in rhythm. I said it during the reaction, and look how much she's enjoying herself there. It's amazing to see that. I don't think I've seen Fern look like this. I mean, maybe once or twice, but very rarely before we had the latest episodes. So doing all of these, and she's closing her eyes, which in my opinion is a clear sign of trust here. Yeah, I hate that it's getting stuck like this, but anyway. And then we have a little bit of a scene between Frieren and Psych. And by the way, Frieren's outfit is kind of making me feel some kind of way, not gonna lie. It's really, really good looking. So yeah, it's great. It's a great outfit. But Psych is trying to slide in them DMs, right? He's trying to he's like, should we dance too? And she's like, I'm going to eat cake. Which is a clear, I don't want to reject you in a mean way, but I'm just gonna ignore you said that and tell you what I'm gonna do. Which he takes the way somebody who's been rejected a couple of times, but also been successful a couple of times takes it. Just casually being like, alright, you know what, fine. I tried. It was an attempt. Yeah, and we conclude the party. We talk to our Lord Orden a little bit, and Stark really, I think Stark and Orden really connected there. I really love that. And we do have that little scene where Stark's like, well, at least he doesn't have to, I mean, it's gonna be a rough time for them until they build up again and recover, but at least he doesn't have to worry about his heir, he says, as he's looking outside of the window, being like, looking at it very warmly, with a lot of affection feelings, in my opinion. He relates a lot to the little boy. and he can relate a lot to the father as well. So that's really cool. And we do, interestingly enough, we do see Frieren walking up to Stark, being very close to him, and then just standing next to him, looking outside the window, just probably in the same direction he does, looking at what he's looking at. And Frieren takes note of that. She takes note of that. We see that, and her face creeps into a little smile, an affectionate smile, really. And she's looking down at the book and is like, okay, I guess it's time to choose the book. But yeah, she noticed that. She noticed that there's something going on there between those two, and it's beautiful, really. Might remind her a little bit of her and Himmel in certain circumstances. But that's about it, actually. I think I'm done with the discussion. It was a really cool episode. Once again, it had a lot to do with feeling, right, and relatability, and just connecting with other people through shared issues, but also recognizing the similarity, the differences between those issues. And I think it's also about growing closer and understanding one another better. And we are in that phase now where the party is complete, right? Not complete, but the party is growing together. Especially the people who have been here longer, but also the other people. And we're having more and more amicable, interesting, and even intimate connections here that are being built. Other than that, I think I'm going to just ruminate on the episode again, let it sit for a bit, and if anything pops up in my head and whatnot, I'll write it down, and we're going to talk about it next episode in the beginning for the pre-discussion. I really, really enjoyed this episode. It didn't have one of those big wow moments like in the last episode with Frieren, because that was emotionally, for us as people who are involved with Frieren from episode 1, it was big, of course, but alone, like the dancing sequence alone was enough for me to be really impressed and really enjoying this episode. As somebody who really likes both Stark and Frieren as characters, and who really wants there to be a little bit happiness in this story, it's really nice to see it happening on screen and being displayed and animated so organically and so enjoyable. Yeah, it's a great thing. And anyway, I do hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy this episode, I would really appreciate it if you gave me a like. I do also have a Discord. If you want, just join us, talk to us about all kinds of things anime or things beyond anime, movies, filmmaking, directing, right? Scene composition, light novels, normal Western novels, or I don't know, Eastern novels. You can give me all the kind of everything you want. Games too. Share some memes with us, whatever. We do have a nice server with a couple of people on there now. Not a lot of activity yet, but we had 1 or 2 cool discussions, and we got some updates and announcements on what's happening on the channel. I would really appreciate if you subscribed, so you don't miss the content that's coming up. Give the bell a little click so you get the notifications, and check out my Patreon. We do have early access. I said in the beginning of the episode, I don't need to elaborate on that. We have early access for Made in Abyss and like a couple of days for Frieren. If that's something for you, or you just want to support me, or maybe you want to be involved in the polls in the future, like in January, February, there are going to be polls. Feel free to check out the Patreon, see if there's something you like. Other than that, I'll see you on the next Frieren episode, or if you watch Made in Abyss, maybe I'll see you there.